have given a name to my pain. The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill
The Bat of Gotham.
You don't really think you'll win, do you?
I'm Batman.
Hello and welcome to episode 157 of the Batman on Film podcast. BOF is the sponsor as well as a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network. Check out all the shows over at batmanpodcastnetwork.com and follow our Twitter at BatPodNetwork. If you're listening to us on iTunes, if you take the time to rate and review the show, we'll read it on the air. Batman on Film is also now on Patreon. If you like what we do here at BOF, whether it's the podcasts, vlogs, or the website itself, and you want to help support us if you're so inclined, please head over to patreon.com/BatmanOnFilm and sign up. I'm the host of the BOF Podcast, Ryan Haas, and on tonight's show, we are going to continue our roundtable discussion about Joker, directed by Todd Phillips and starring Joaquin Phoenix. That's right, Ryan Lauer, Chris Clow, Paul Hermann, and myself, of course, are back for more. This discussion picks up right where we left off in BOF Podcast 156, where Chris and Paul were getting a little heated. So let's see how that resolves as we continue our discussion and get pretty far down the rabbit hole of whether Joker should get a sequel or not, and what our final thoughts are on the film, at least for now. Enjoy.
So I want to make it very clear that I apologize for any listeners that thought maybe I was saying he's sympathetic when he kills those people on the subway. That is not any remote way that I'm saying. He obviously had self-defense and he took it too far, like kind of Chris had mentioned before. But I do, like I said before, I do think he's sympathetic to an extent, but not to what the extent of what a lot of the pre-political stuff we were talking about in a few minutes ago, that there was this sympathetic white incel mentality, like, oh, it gives him all this justification. It doesn't. I think, again, what the Joker does a great job of is showing you the downfall of, there's a certain point where you again, like how you said, Chris, you brought up your awful Star Trek reference, but anyway, but awful. No, I just only because of Star Trek. We're
trying to end this debate here.
No, there's no debate because he's not wrong either. It's just he brought up Star Trek and I don't like Star Trek. But the reason why
nobody's perfect,
you understand you understand where he comes from, or you understand why he does it, but it doesn't any means justify it. And I think the movie does a good job, in my opinion, of showcasing why it's not right and why he's wrong. And I think that all that stuff that people want, all this drama going into the movie saying, oh, it glorifies violence. It was so overplayed, and everyone's going to view this movie differently, right? That again, that's kind of art. That is interpretation. I'm almost done. But just really fast, that because of that interpretation of people thinking this glorifies it, I think most people went into this and saw it as, no, it's not glorifying. It's showing you that, like, the wrong decisions that one person that is had awful things happen to him start to go down, and how it is a perpetual snowball effect, as you can see, as it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Go ahead.
It kind of reminds me of this 1990s movie called The Santa Claus with Tim Allen.
Oh my Lord!
You kind of sympathize him up to a certain point, and then you realize that it's wrong.
Man. You realize that someone Photoshop Tim Allen Santa Claus with Joaquin Phoenix's
the original Santa Claus.
So.
The original Santa Claus had to die to have Tim Allen take his place, basically. So that's pretty dark.
And he didn't want to fill his suit, and you felt for him. But then you realize,
instead of accidentally killing Santa Claus, he actually full on murdered Santa Claus in the original film, or the original script, where he said
that's more. That was just from Tim Allen's perspective. You don't know what really happened.
He's like, no, I want to be Santa Claus.
You didn't see the deleted
Christmas sleigh.
You didn't see the deleted scene where he used a pair of scissors and stabbed him into his neck.
He's like, hey, Santa.
That's why his clothes are red.
They filmed that, and they were like, I don't know, guys. Maybe we need to do another take. Let's cut it out.
That's the wrong sitcom, dude.
All right, Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, you brought up the fervor that the movie kicked up a few times now. And I think I mentioned it at the top of the show too, right? It's like ascribing certain meaning to something that doesn't necessarily have it on its own, but what puts it in perspective, or at least what put it into perspective for me, maybe you guys have a different perspective. The Joker's full body count in this movie is less than Batman's in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I think that's. I'm not trying to kick up a shitstorm by saying that. It's an objective fact, but also too. I mean, I studied politics for 4.5 years in school. The politics at play in this movie are pretty lightweight, and I think that's by design. Like, I'm not calling the movie's philosophical aims lightweight. I'm just saying that the political aims that the movie, or the political themes that the movie plays with, are very like top surface level kinds of politics. And that's appropriate considering how important politics are to Arthur, because he doesn't care, right? I mean, that's one of the primary things. So like I was saying before, Arthur acts, and he acts against people who are viewed as representatives of that upper class. So people who are already politically disgruntled by that upper class see that happen, and their response is to ascribe their own interpretation and meaning onto the senseless killing that Arthur committed. And in a way, that's what it's kind of like a strange after the fact meta commentary on the reaction to the movie.
Mm-hmm. It is, absolutely.
So, like what I said at the very top of the show, I'm not going to say that I was disappointed. I was surprised at the lack of violence, actually, which is kind of weird to say because there is violence in it. But given that whole month of hype and all that BS stirred about, like, sorry, but I feel like it was BS of how, oh my gosh, it could incite people to want to commit and blah, blah, blah. And then it became like, oh, should it, because of its violence, will that hurt its Oscar chances? And it's like, what the hell kind of movies have you people been forgetting about that you've nominated for Oscars and made tons of monies and everything?
We can only look back 5 seconds.
There's so much, like, for some reason, this became the target when all these others that, in my opinion, have been, I'm not going to say worse because it's like there are good movies that have these elements in them, but it's like all these movies that have more violence and more disturbing subject matter and stuff that have been celebrated more on a wide scale and with awards and everything. And I don't understand why this one's getting this crap that it is, because the movie that I saw, like, and I've asked other people their thoughts too, and then it's kind of getting the same response of like, I don't get what in this, and then if we get to more parts in the story, I can defend my thinking and why I still I don't see it being that prevalent, and I don't know.
It's a very surface level kind of critique. I mean, I could offer the same depth of critique by saying, well, you guys awarded Oscars a couple years ago to a movie where a lady had sex with a fish. And that is technically true, but I actually think Shape of Water is a good movie. But it's the same kind of loose perspective on what governs movies that are quote-unquote worthy of awards. Now, just to be clear, my own personal perspective is that performance-wise, this movie is probably worth an award, maybe production design.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'd give this movie a screenplay award, personally. But either way, it's an extraordinarily subjective perspective to have on whether or not a movie is worthy of awards. But the reaction to this, for some reason, is so out of touch. That was one of the things that I found honestly refreshing about just sitting and watching the movie, because is this movie worthy of that kind of an uproar? I don't think so. But also, is there potential for people to take the message and the story the wrong way? Absolutely. Both of those things can be true at the same time. It's not a mutually exclusive concept.
Agreed.
You can't account for the way that some people who maybe do feel rejected by society will take the story content of the movie.
Yeah.
But
and that's in the movie. That's crazy.
Yeah. But is that larger reaction justified, particularly when it comes to coverage of the movie and some of these more in-depth conversations about the philosophical and moral character of the movie business at large based on this one movie? Not to knock it, but I don't think this movie necessarily justifies that kind of elevated conversation. It's just a movie. It's a good movie, but it's just a movie.
I think that it is a sensitive time in these days, and I want to say this for the record. I'm really glad for obviously all the reasons in the world, but the most important that no one was hurt. Thank God that nothing ever escalated to anything, and whether it was justified or fear-mongering or whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm just glad nothing really happened. I know they shut down one theater, but either way, I'm relieved and glad that did not happen, and because nothing good comes of that, obviously, at all. And I'm relieved that nothing happened. And so with that being said, it is unfortunate that it got all this really weird publicity around it. It was negative, and they went after Todd Phillips, which I think Todd Phillips probably, you obviously saw his frustration with what he had to deal with pre-press, and I think he said some things he probably just kept his mouth shut a little bit more. Him and Joaquin, I think Joaquin did a little bit better than he did, but Joaquin also had his moments. And again, at the same time, I will say this: I
empathized with them for that.
It's unfortunate that they have to deal with this, but at the same time, you gotta be respectable. And I to be honest, I didn't read everything that Joaquin said. I don't want to say maybe he said some really awful things. I don't know. I know he got mad a couple times, but let's be real here too.
Said he loves Star Trek.
He probably did. But the thing is, Joaquin's obviously a notorious weird interview. Like I was watching the Red Letter Media.
Oh, yeah, he's kind of a method actor.
Yeah. Because there's the very end of their Joker review. They show an old clip of Joaquin talking to a lady, and she's like, "I just love this movie so much. I cried like twice." And he's kind of nodding his head, and he's much younger, and he goes, "I don't believe you cried a day in your life." And he just stares, and he's like, "100%." That's where he ends it. and then they end it right there, and I'm like, holy crap, that's amazing. I'm just saying, Joaquin's a weird dude, so I could see where he would react badly in certain situations when the press is kind of going after him and saying this movie is this or that, or it's glorifying this, And again, I'm not, but I do.
Also, too, the content within the movie. I mean, you look at the character's actions. How does he try to justify what he does? The answer is that he doesn't. When he's asked what he believes, he says, "I don't believe in anything." Mm-hmm. And again, it's just that externality of people trying to ascribe meaning to meaninglessness.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And he feels, at least what he's seeing or experiencing is like, what he wants is that his decisions has gotten acceptance of people.
Exactly.
And adoration.
Yes.
Like, so it's, I mean,
and I think the Joker likes, as a character in general terms, he likes being a mystery and likes not being able to be figured out.
Well, and also similarly to other aspects of the source material. I mean, it's surprising how reflexive the movie can end up being, especially when it doesn't have a direct mandate to try and stick close to it. But look at the kind of people that he ends up attracting. Not only does he end up attracting people who are willing to also express themselves through violence, maybe not murder, but definitely violence.
Well, don't they kill the cops on the subway at the end? Is that...
Did they end up killing them?
Did they?
No.
I think they were in the hospital.
They commented on the Murray show. They said they're like critical or...
Right, yeah, they were in the hospital.
Okay.
But clearly, too, one of the people that he ended up attracting, whether it's his name or not, is Joe Chill.
Yes. Or Joe Chill in quotation marks, at least.
If that is in fact him.
Whoever the person is that actually gives... And, looking, because I can't help, of course, but
Or
look
Jack
at
Napier.
the yeah. No, that's a whole other thing,
Dude, how meta would that be?
He takes the mask off and it's like CG Jack Nicholson.
Oh, dude. Oh,
Like a
Bill would love that.
I can't help but try and like project outward about what this could mean for the formation of this Batman. Because all of a sudden, too, it's an interesting idea to already create potentially a source of hatred for the Joker well before he even becomes Batman. Because if his parents, he saw that whoever killed his parents was wearing a clown mask. And that will probably have a pronounced effect on who this Batman ends up becoming. But at the same time, I don't want to see that story.
Okay,
yeah.
so this,
and I don't think that the filmmakers are necessarily interested
now,
in
now,
going there either.
we have to talk about this. This is a great segue, a perfect segue to the sequel conversation, because I disagree with everyone who says no, it should be one and done. Because one of the things that I think this movie does a beautiful job of is it sets up a much more harsher and even more realistic Batman than we get in the Nolan trilogy. In my opinion, it sets it up. I'm not, could you eventually do something even more realistic and brutal than that? Yeah, whatever. But my point is this. This is why I want the sequel. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to be on the show, is even more so once I saw it, because my wife and I were talking about this, and she loved the movie too, by the way. She loved this movie.
And she's not typically a comic book movie.
No, she hates comic book movies and she refuses to go see these movies in general. But I knew right off the bat when this was announced, like, she would want to see this movie because Scorsese was involved, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, the reason why I think this movie deserves a sequel, I understand that it is a perfect one and done in a sense, but a couple things I think that are crucial that we could see is, I think, one, the rise of the Joker being the criminal mastermind. I would love to see that aspect that was not really touched on in this movie. You get a little bit of that at the end, which again is brilliant. I love that stuff, but I would love to see Arthur's transformation from this lowly character that made these crazy leaps to a criminal icon / turns into a mastermind, right? That seems interesting to me, and see how that person that doesn't have that background also would have that. And to me, there is more story to be told in that sense. Now you add the Batman element. I know that that's a very hot button topic, but hear me out on this. The reason why I want to see a film 10 years down the road or something like that is the sense that, going back to what I was saying before, Gotham literally has birthed its greatest villain and its greatest hero. And before, you see Thomas Wayne as this sympathetic character, like in the Nolan trilogy, as he's a good man. I mean, and all the films that we see, or all the things that I've seen Thomas Wayne in, he's a stand-up person. He is essentially what Bruce aspires to be as an adult, as Bruce Wayne. But what happens if this Thomas Wayne in this movie is not exactly this, I would say, in my opinion, as this person that you would be like, oh yeah, this guy's 100% someone you want to emulate exactly like. It's actually, no, like, he kind of contributed to, again, going back to the society aspect, to like this downfall of Gotham. He contributed to that, and essentially contributed to the birth of the fact that of Batman / Bruce Wayne being an orphan. So thinking about the idea of a Batman being birthed from this even more realistic, scummy Gotham, and having to rise up against someone that you as the viewer know that birthed the Joker as well. Even though, again, going back to the sympathy aspect, Chris, even though he made all these awful decisions, Gotham was a byproduct of essentially contributing to the Joker, just like it contributed to the Batman. And I would love to see Batman be in this world, and how he would deal with that, and how that, you're being a beacon of light, so to speak, of being that symbol that he is in Gotham, and what that would mean for this specific Gotham, and also what that would mean for the parallels and the message you could tell, because obviously this message in this movie is deep. You could tell a similar deep message with a Batman that's maybe not, it's not as like comic booky, but again, more realistic. See that aspect of these two characters birthed from the same society and how they turn out differently and what that means. I think there's rich storytelling there.
I want to go.
I
want to go.
Okay,
I want to
go.
go. I want to go. I want to
Go.
go. I want to go. I want to go. I want to go. I got a lot to say. Paul Hermann, P-Thug. Question.
Yes, sir.
So usually Bruce Wayne becomes an orphan at the age of 8 or 10.
Sure.
So you want to see him be Batman, which is 15, 17 years in the future.
Let's say 10, 12 years.
10. Well, Bruce at 18 or 22, I don't think he's a developed Batman.
Well,
but judging from what we saw in Gotham.
And then at that point, he's taking on a 55, 60-year-old Joker. Like,
let me rebuttal.
Yeah.
Which we also saw in Gotham.
But hold on.
Okay, you can rebuttal, then I will rebuttal your rebuttal.
Okay, the reason I don't think Joaquin Phoenix is playing someone who's 50 years old in this movie. He's playing someone in his 30s because Zazie Beetz is clearly in her, late 20s, early 30s, and I feel that they play him in his early 30s too. He does not come across that he's in his like 50s or late 40s, and that's where I was
going purely on his age, Joaquin. So, but point made, and yeah, I can see him as a 30 something.
Exactly, and that's why I think it would work because it's essentially what Batman is in the movie, or excuse me, that's what Batman versus Joker is. He's almost a 10, 15, I would say around 10, 15 years ish. And if you look at, if you give, let's say Bruce 12 years, right? He could be a form of Batman. He doesn't have to go League of Shadows and get trained, and do all that. You could maybe, again, you can do your own interpretation of Batman here. How did he become Batman? You don't have to do the same routine, just like they didn't do the same routine with Joker. Yeah. And this is where I think, I just think of the message of the bigger message of Batman versus the Joker and society and how that plays into everything. There's more rich storytelling there. And that's why I want a sequel. It's not that I want to see a sequel and be like, oh, I want to see Batman beat the crap out of Joker. No. I want to see what it means to have, if someone takes up that mantle of Gotham and in this Gotham, in the aspect of where if society bursts you, do you recognize that you are, does Batman recognize that? Does Batman recognize that it birthed the Joker? Because the Joker's origin essentially it's different than all the comic books, right? Because everyone knows what happened to the Joker because he says it on TV. He says it on the Murray Show. He says what happens when you cross someone who's mentally ill and into a society that won't accept them.
Or did he say it on the Murray Show?
But what again? But let's assume that happened.
That's my
that whole thing was
well, perfect. Okay, so you say that. So here's my rebuttal. So
sure.
Yes, I love Batman versus Joker in anything except Gotham, the TV show. But having that having a sequel, I feel will answer questions that they asked in this that they wanted left open.
Right.
So they're going to be interpreting some of the results for you, which I don't feel by anything that I've read or watched of Phillips or Phoenix. They wanted to leave stuff open for you to come up with your own. Like they laid stuff out so that you can say, oh, this part is in his head. This part really happened, and back and forth. I feel like doing a sequel, they're going to have to take a stance on many of those scenes, therefore answering it. And some people will be fine with it. Others can feel like that will kind of damage this movie. I would love to see more Batman, especially like in a world like this. But I feel like what it will end up doing, I feel, is answer questions that they didn't want answered.
I'll say this last thing and I'll let you guys go. I apologize, but I would say that you could do that, Lauer, and still not answer the things from the previous movie. For the most part, you might answer a few things, but you can still leave things to their imagination. I think that like him talking on the TV it happened because everyone riots afterwards. So he did something and said something in front of everyone to inspire everyone, like, again, crashing into the car and lifting him up. And again, we know that happened because you see the Waynes get killed as a result of all that. And that's what this is where I think the sequel has so much meat to it. I'm not saying a trilogy. You could just do 2 films, bam, bam. And again, the idea of Batman seeing the society drive someone to go insane and know that was the same day that killed his parents, and to know that his dad might have contributed to that. Like, think about the psychological things. Think of the acting and the writing you could do with that, with a Bruce Wayne who's even more, not only does he have to deal with the guilt of his, or not guilt, excuse me, but the trauma. That, again, going back to the trauma aspect, because this is the same Joker that had childhood trauma that affected him going up. Bruce is going to have the same kind of thing. I mean, not the same, but a similar trauma where he's got this, it's going to mess him up from an early childhood. But the difference is he'll be able to look at that and learn and adapt from that, but it's still going to be hard for him. There is so much rich material there that I would love to see. Again, kind of, I don't want to compare these two things together, but kind of like a Glass, if you will, Ryan. Like,
yeah,
not like that, but to an extent to where, but again, you have multiple leads and you kind of explore each one of them. So that's equal. It's literal equal screen time where you have the older Joaquin Phoenix and you don't have to explain all the things that you were saying, but you have those aspects. You see that he's become a different person. You see him transform into that criminal mastermind, but then he sees again this character, the Batman or Bruce or whatever, and he sees that and Batman can recognize we are, and he can tell Joker, we are because of Gotham. Gotham created both of us. And I don't know. I just think because this movie did a great job of showing us the pain and of all these realistic things that people can understand a little bit and at least can acknowledge, and you see parallels in real life happening before their eyes. I think the same thing could happen with Batman in a much less, superhero, I'm going to beat up the bad guy. There's a lot more rich storytelling there. I think you could do with this kind of movie, specifically less action, more emphasis on the emotional, psychological elements of Batman.
I mean, all that's well and good, but I just think that 2 things. First of all, I don't think that this creative team they're interested in Joker. They're not really even interested in Batman, and they've said as much. Second of all, I think the only Batman on film we're going to see in anytime soon is going to be Robert Pattinson in Matt Reeves' Batman, and I just don't think they're going to go there or be allowed to go there.
You're probably right. Yeah, doesn't mean I don't want it.
Well,
yeah.
First thing that comes to mind, I suppose, is that I don't think Arthur's capable of becoming a mastermind. I just don't think that he has the faculties that we normally ascribe to the traditional incarnation of the Joker. I just don't know if he can actually reach that level. But completely divorcing this movie from the Batman mythos, which is hard. I admit that, but
yeah.
I think it's meant particularly by Phillips, to be taken that way as much as possible. Completely divorcing it from that, I think a follow-up to this would diminish the social commentary that is absent from the connections to the world of Batman. And that commentary, at least under my interpretation, being that the city, if Gotham is always a character in these stories, the environment is also always a character in these stories. New York is a character in Taxi Driver, and the comedy community is a character in The King of Comedy. That community that surrounds Arthur was unconcerned with the creation of this kind of evil, but when it results, it's not concerned as well either with controlling or containing it. And I mean, you look at the things that take place to Arthur well before he becomes Joker. The social services in Gotham are cut in order to try and make ends meet on the budget, which deprives him of professional psychiatric assistance, and it deprives him of multiple medications that he's using to try and keep his mind in check. He realizes near the end of the movie that he has been lied to his entire life by the person that he thought he could trust the most. His employer ignores anything that he brings up in terms of on-the-job grievances, instead choosing to lambaste him for his stupidity. At home, professional help. At work, he has nothing. And his response is an extreme one but it is still a response to try and get even with the environment that created him. That being said,
even so much as I was going to add in, even so much as like, Murray himself, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you look at the first daydream that Arthur had about what his encounter with Murray would be like. It didn't really end up going down that way at the end. Granted, he had also just admitted that he committed 3 murders. But beyond that, though, it's hard for me to doubt, or to believe, rather, what the filmmakers have said about conceiving this as a one-off for one primary reason. And that is that Joker did not die at the end of this movie. If they really wanted this to be a close the book, this is a done-in-one story, they would not have left that thread there. It would be much easier for me to believe that they wanted to tell that kind of contained story if Arthur had committed suicide by cop at the end. It would have been something we'd never have seen before.
What's fascinating is that they telegraph it twice in the movie.
Right.
They do. You're expecting it to happen.
And maybe there's a first blood scenario going on where he actually does die at the end, but that's not what made it into the movie. But it's especially hard for me to believe that the intent was to be a standalone movie, especially recently, considering things that both Phillips and Phoenix have said in alluding to openness to doing another one.
Yeah.
So,
which took me by surprise, honestly.
Sure, and it took me by surprise too. But the idea, it's hard for me to believe, especially considering how successful this movie is too. Warner Brothers exists to make money, and this has made them a fair amount of money, at least if the budgets are to be believed, the figures that have been cited by other people, but I don't think there's been any official confirmation of what the budget was. But if they can make another movie on this scale, and they can drum up enough concern for it, or interest in it, then it seems ready-made for a sequel. Maybe that's not going to end up happening. I will be pleased if that doesn't end up happening, but I have a hard time believing, especially considering this Warner Brothers, the same Warner Brothers that is still trying to make Harry Potter movies after the main story concluded, and that doubled down on Zack Snyder because of the money first, without really taking into account the critical concerns that would come about from doubling down on his vision of the characters. And the same Warner Brothers that gave Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher absolute carte blanche because they turned in that first one that did so well.
I think that's the closest thing to what we'll get. I think that they'll probably give Phillips and Phoenix like free reign to come up with an idea or explore it and see if there's something that they feel is worth telling, and maybe they'll pull the trigger on making something if they think
potentially
that they
but
want to do it.
There's also the possibility, like, if this is a version of the character that they really want to exploit in the future, and if the primary performer is willing to continue it in some fashion, then they could pull Michael Goff and Pat Hingle and just incorporate this performer into another version of the world if they wanted to. I'm led to believe that Phoenix in general has an aversion to role reprisal, but it also seems like he has a lot of affection for this version of the character, presuming that's coming from his artistic curiosity and not from the royalty checks that he knows he's going to get. So,
I mean, I've seen an interview today where he literally says that. He was asked, you normally don't do sequels, and he said, yeah, and the thing that was the most fascinating thing to him about the Joker is that he can't figure this character out. And initially he thought, no, I won't do a sequel. And he
saw
said,
that, yeah.
And he said now he's like, but now I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop thinking about what if there is something to do with
and that's the sign of a solid actor. And people might roll their eyes when I bring this up too, but John C. Reilly said something very similar about a really weird character that he's only played on TV, but that is always fascinating to watch. And that is Dr. Steve Brule, who's appeared on Adult Swim. Totally weird character. Yeah, and I know that Paul... But he said something very similar, whereas I like to keep doing it because it's a mystery. I don't know what makes him do the things that he does, and the more that I find out, the less interested I am in it. And that's why I like to keep exploring it at this level. And what Phoenix relayed sounded very similar, in that the broad strokes and the idea of delving into this rather unpredictable kind of personality is fun for him. Well, so there's certainly potential there. This story, this world.
But this is the thing. Phoenix, and what you're saying is it nails it, because the possibilities are endless, because there's complexities that run deeper than just I understand that this is a brilliant film and a great commentary on society and all that jazz, but there's even more layers that you can take off of this. And as I was saying, obviously Phoenix feels the same way, and he probably thought, I don't want to do this because it's a sequel. I wouldn't want to do it. But I think he sees the financial, let's be real. He sees the financial gain of this, but he also sees that not only there's a financial gain, but there's still a lot of story that he could tell, and with so many different layers that he can add with this character and this interpretation. So, and again, that's what makes me even more excited. Is if they were just like, no, we only don't want to do one, I'd be like, yeah, I would love it. I would still feel the way I feel about a sequel. But the fact that they have ideas and that they're kind of like, well, maybe we kind of, I think, to be honest, I think you're going to see a sequel. I would be shocked. I would not be shocked if it happened at all. Well, and I think, I'm not saying Batman would be in it, but I would say that I think that there could be still more story to tell, just because there's more complexities in this. And I think there is definitely way more stories to tell with Phoenix and Phillips personally.
Can I ask you guys something? All three of you. Did his Murray appearance and then the chaos in the city, to you, did it happen for real?
Well, the thing that happens at the very end where, Phoenix
in the hospital?
says, yeah, where he's like, that's the joke, or you just didn't get it.
I'm thinking of a joke, you wouldn't get it.
I'm like, was the whole movie not real?
Don't say that. Not I see dead people. No.
Well, no, it's a valid question, because we saw that one brief shot of him banging his head into the door in the asylum. At least I assume it's the asylum.
It is. Yeah. And the clock at that point, and then the clock in the social workers is at the exact same time.
Weird.
I don't know what that means yet. It's bugging the shit out of me.
See, that's the thing. It's like if they do a sequel,
is it going to ruin it, though? Is that really going to ruin the movie if you find out that most of it was real?
Well, the reason that I asked that, though, is because you're saying that if there is a sequel, then it's going to be like after the events of what he did in the city, like certain people following his lead. Well, then that's answering that it did happen.
Exactly.
Where there are a lot of theories of like, both ways. I think there's evidence to support either way.
You're right. You can,
and so this is answering that of like, nope, there was not this way that a lot of you thought it, and that there was evidence for. It was this. This is what happened. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. Right. I'm just saying that like I think Phillips loves that it's open for people to come up with whatever they want, and they're answering that for people. And some people I think wouldn't like that.
But Phillips also is one of the people said he could make a sequel too. So it's obviously he doesn't care that much about it. So,
here, on this episode, we have made lots of very unexpected pop culture references, and I'll give
Santa
you another
Claus.
one. Well, I'll give you another one. Like,
right.
So everybody's, who likes good movies has probably seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Okay. So the book that was based off of is called Who Censored Roger Rabbit. And it's very adult and very not like the movie in a lot of ways. And the writer of that book, Gary K. Wolfe, actually, this is not the first time we've mentioned this on the BOF podcast, but the writer of that book wrote a number of sequels to Who Censored Roger Rabbit. And the first sequel he wrote, I believe it's called Who Plugged Roger Rabbit. And it's a sequel. It's written by the same guy, but it's not connected to the original at all. It's just another story by the same guy with the same characters, and he just tells another story, and nothing that happened in the other one, in the first one, mattered at all. Do you think it's possible that they could just, same creative team, Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix come back and just make another movie about the Joker, but it doesn't really have anything to really do with this? Like, is that a route that they could take while preserving everything that happened in this first one? Because again,
I think, because first of all, I have one question before I move on, and please answer this for me, because I don't think you guys all think this, but if it was all fake at the end, then what was the whole Bruce Wayne thing? That was a real thing that happened. That was a byproduct of what was going on.
So I think that there's evidence to support that to him, and if you're going down that route, and he's thinking all of this, he's thinking that the joke, this is how I took it, of like, oh, you wouldn't get it. The joke is, Thomas Wayne left me a fatherless child. Now his child is fatherless. That's what I took from that, and that's what
he doesn't
supports.
know.
We don't know.
He's making it up.
Guys, I think. No, hold on. I just want to say. These theories are a lot like the member of the Fantastic Four. His name is Mr. Fantastic. What is his superpower?
Being fantastic.
Stretching. Anyway, so
I mean it's not impractical to cater to the idea that he does know that Thomas Wayne died in the riot.
You're right.
Thomas Wayne's a person of prominence,
but he doesn't
and that
see
was probably
it. He
reported
doesn't
all over
see
Gotham.
it. He's
but
not
he probably heard about it.
If this is all his story that he's making up, though. Paul, there is evidence that that's the route people can take.
Or you could say that, hey, in this next movie that's directed by this dude named Matt Reeves, Batman's already kicked the shit out of the Joker and thrown him into the asylum, and he's constructed this entire story the entire time that he's been incarcerated.
Oh, my head.
See, this is what I'm saying. Too. I know. Here's the thing. He definitely the element of misleading the audience, or a better way of giving an interpretation to it, definitely is. If that's what you take from the movie, then you're right. A sequel will ruin all of that. But see, I don't take the movie as it's all an interpretation of all these different ideas and what is, because I don't think that's the theme of the movie, though. That's not even close to the theme. It's not even like a main point. It's, to me, it's like such a small, more of an artistic style, if you will. Like let's throw the idea that this could all be in his head, just to kind of again a different take on making the movie.
It's like finding a path between, let's say, American Psycho and Fight Club, right? Because both of those movies involved the primary character constructing either a separate identity or a separate stream of events that maybe happened in the case of Patrick Bateman, but also could very easily not have happened.
Oh
exactly. Well, see,
Patrick Bateman killed Jared Leto, and then Jared Leto became the Joker. What?
Right.
Well, see, I think like from that first scene in Joker where where it showed that he's imagining what his ideal scenario would be like on the Murray Show, I think all bets are off after that scene. It's showing you like he's making stuff up in his head, and so I think the whole rest of the movie after that point is like suspect.
Paul,
I know I have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice.
Paul, I know it's been driving you crazy of the thought that this is made up, and it's been fun to get you riled up about it. I like to believe that it really happened, though.
No, I know you do.
I like to believe it really happened.
No, and I know there's people out there that, and I'm not trying to, I really want to make clear, I don't want to discredit that theory, but to an extent. But I mean, as far as a sequel goes, because if it's by itself, you can interpret it whatever way you want. We can debate that. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But again, if you make a sequel to it, you're right. Like, it will answer some questions, but I don't think that's a bad thing in a sense, because again, it's an interpretation. It's not exactly like, the point of the movie is not to be interpreted as, did this really happen or not? I don't think that's the theme or the point of the movie at all. If it was, then it would be you're right. A sequel would be detrimental to the whole main theme, but that's not a main theme of the movie. It's an aspect that adds to the movie.
But the movie does seem to kind of give off the idea that mental stability is more fluid, at least in Arthur's case.
You're right. Exactly. But I don't think that, again, a sequel would make that wouldn't make the Zazie Beetz reveal of and the interpretation of that, which is, I think, to me, even more important, that is all in his head. I think that stuff to me is even more, I think, argumentative and more interesting, because did he kill Zazie Beetz and her daughter, or did he not? And we don't know.
I know what Ryan Haas thinks.
But yeah,
he totally did.
Yeah. Well, but see, that to me is more interesting, because you have because a sequel will never answer that unless they actually address it. Whereas if you do a sequel, this is all in his head. That's what I think. I mean, you're right. That would poo-poo that idea. But to me, that's not a bigger deal than, I think, the fact that what happened with the girl and her daughter. That to me is way more of a bigger deal, because again, we don't know the extent of what Arthur was at that moment, because he was the plight of the Joker, or the ascent of the Joker was not yet full swing, but that was like the precursor. It's like right between it. You just don't know, because he let the little person go, right? But we don't know what happened to her. That to me is way more interesting and way more like kind of, ooh, what happened? Like you want to know, but you don't want to know either. Whereas with the whole thing at the very end, it's like, where's it supposed to go? Of course it all had to happen. So see, this is, again, going back, this is a great reason, or this is a beautiful reason why the movie is great. Right here is what we're having this conversation for. This is awesome.
Right. Like, this is what they wanted.
Exactly.
To be honest.
So this is where I stand at the end when it comes to sequel talk, Paul.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it topical.
Lauer.
Yeah.
Why don't we do this and like maybe try to get some like final type thoughts.
Final
thoughts. All wrapped up in a nice bow.
Thoughts.
Oh snap.
I believe
final for now thoughts.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
First,
like I said, I even tweeted about this. We're going to be talking about this movie for a while.
All right, so Breaking Bad, one of the greatest dramas in the history of television, ended to me perfectly. I didn't need any more. Would I want to see more? Yes, I'd want to see more, but I don't know. Well, all of a sudden, the man behind it, Vince Gilligan, decided to come up with this movie to follow Jesse Pinkman. Now, I would have said, yes, I want to see more, but hey, you finished something up perfectly. But hold on, the guy that had the whole vision and created everything has this idea that he thinks will work. We won't know until we see El Camino if it is a good follow-up or not. So it's a very cautiously optimistic of like, I hope you don't screw up what you did perfectly before. In a sense, that's how I would feel if they go the route of a sequel of, are the same people behind it? Are the same people doing it? Are they passionate about it and really believe they have a good idea? Then I will be cautiously optimistic and I will follow and watch. But damn if they don't nail it, you know? And I think that's how I would be on a sequel. And I think that's why I instantly go to, they shouldn't make another one, though. They shouldn't make another one.
Awesome.
All right, so
like,
what now? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, my joke type answer is like, well, how many sequels did they make for Psycho, and how many of those were good?
Bates Motel.
There's my answer.
Ooh,
it's like, well, I was like, they made like 3 sequels of that, and none of them were good. So,
so
Joker could be the same thing.
Nothing matches, but there's a few arguable that like the second one is actually like pretty decent, or it's the third one. I haven't seen them. Anyway, I'll shut up. Go ahead. Bates Motel was really, really good though.
Well, you know, and that was my joke answer because I've seen Bates Motel and all the Psycho movies, and they're actually not that bad. I mean, Psycho 1, of course, is a classic, and the other ones are fascinating in terms of like what they do, but I do feel like they kind of muck up the original the more that they go down the rabbit hole, right? So I kind of wouldn't want to see that happen with Joker, but what I really think is kind of closer to what you said, Lauer. Like if that creative team really does have a thing they want to try and do, okay. I mean, that's basically what we did for this movie.
That's true.
They were like, we want to create this Joker solo movie. origin thing, and we're like, that sounds awful, but okay.
Yeah,
you know?
I was not Paul Hermann on that. I instantly was like, why?
Yeah, I think most people were pretty indifferent / not looking forward to this. So we're really, kind of blown away. I don't want to speak for everybody, but we're all pretty like impressed with the film. So yeah, I mean, if they want to, I guess do it, but don't do it for the right reasons, and I don't want to see studio oversight be like, okay, we need a Mr. Freeze movie that's just like Joker or whatever.
They would
don't do that.
Yeah. That's what I'm afraid of. We've seen the Lex Luthor and the other
already being rumored.
And you know what?
Don't do that.
But here's the thing: if there's please edit that out. I apologize. No, good lord, no. If there's a good story there, sure. But let's be real. I mean, a Mr. Freeze story by himself without Batman. If there's a great story, we just said that
about the Joker. We just said that would be awful.
But the Joker is a lot more. But the Joker is a lot more interesting, I think, than Mr. Freeze, in my opinion.
Joker's not as cool.
Well, that as well. That as well.
Very
Chill.
Good. Paul?
Yes.
Got any final type thoughts?
Well, I've said enough, but basically, I think that there is, really quickly, this movie is great. I love a sequel. I'm not going to be devastated if they don't make a sequel. And either way, like you said, Ryan, we're going to be talking about this movie for a long time, and this will. And most of all, and I said it at the very beginning, this will push comic book movies and the material, I think, both ways. I think the medium of comic books and the medium of comic book films and adapting that material, I think it's going to be, it can be even more literal in a real world sense in the comics that you can see that people could want from these characters, and vice versa from the comics to the film. If you have a more gritty story that's a little more realistic or whatever, or a different interpretation, those things are more welcomed if the right story is there. And I think that it'll go both ways. And I'm really excited to see what the Joker opens up besides bad editorials from Time Magazine and Hollywood Reporter. So, yeah, I'm very excited of what this could lead to on both mediums, especially for comic books. I really do think this will inspire a writer to do different things with different characters for these mainstream superheroes or villains. And that's exciting. And we don't know what it is yet, but it's going to happen. This will inspire other things for creative people, and that's what gets me excited. And besides a potential sequel, so give it to me.
Yeah, I think if it opens up the studios to be a little bit more open to things and see that you can let things happen a little organically and not have to shove everything into a certain direction to get the revenue or whatever you want. This Joker movie just broke the October opening weekend record or whatever. So
broke every October record, basically.
Yeah. So they can take some risks and make interesting films, and that can be a path to success. And really, they've gone a long roundabout way of getting back to what Warner Brothers has always said that they've been about this whole time, ever since 2012. So
I have a follow-up question to that, but I want to let Clow give his final thoughts.
All right. Well,
no Star Trek references.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. I'm gonna make you watch Star Trek a lot when I get back there for the holidays. I'm gonna go all Clockwork Orange on you and just strap you into a chair and tape your eyeballs open so you can watch the brilliance of William Shatner as James T. Kirk.
Oh my goodness, that sounds terrible.
Paul Hermann.
That impression was also bad.
It was fine.
Thanks.
All right, final thoughts. Joker's a good movie. And I've said it before, I don't necessarily think that it's a great movie. As a movie divorced from the material, it's an intriguing character study, but I don't think that necessarily makes it remarkable. But when you attach the fact that this is a comic book movie, regardless of how you slice it, that is what makes it more unique and potentially important, because like Paul said, like all of you guys have said, it does demonstrate that there is additional malleability and potentially artistic malleability to these kinds of more intimate character explorations. Mm-hmm. And the thing that surprised me when I walked out of Joker is that it manages to nail something that, even though it wasn't very concerned with following the details of the source material, it managed to nail something that has only really ever been achieved in the comics. Something objectively awful happens, but in a comedically surprising way. You laugh at these moments. It creates this oncoming sense of utter dread that comic book fans often feel at the mere mention of the fact that the Joker is operating in a particular story. He is a harbinger of hate and death, and the movie does a really effective job of replicating that kind of dread. So in that sense, it's a surprisingly close adaptation in terms of its tone. Certainly not in the events that transpire in the movie, but tonally, it does get to the place that the Joker is supposed to occupy in the world that he inhabits. That being said, the Joker in his original conception, you go back to Batman #1, he's a stone-cold killer. He's designed to take the reading audience and drag them down. And my personal preference in seeing a Joker story is where he is counterbalanced by the darker flavor of heroism that is exhibited by Batman. Joker's not held accountable to much of anything in this movie. That's not a knock on the movie. That's just what I prefer to see out of a story that features the Joker. He was designed as a foil for Batman, and when you have a Joker story that does not have Batman in it, I feel like it's missing something. Again, personal preference, not a knock on the movie. So this is most definitely an interesting experiment that I hope leads to some similar things down the road. And it is absolutely worth watching. The lead performance is magnetic. I don't know any other real way to describe it. But there's just a couple of things that make it fall short of greatness in my eyes. But that doesn't take away from the fact, at least I don't think, that this kind of movie and the movie that Joker represents, it shows that there's limitless potential for the explorations of different kinds of adaptations with these characters. And in that respect, that it makes this movie completely valid in the lexicon of comics movies in general. And I'm glad that it exists, and I hope it leads to some more interesting exploitations down the road, whether from DC or another company.
Awesome. Lauer, you had a follow-up question you had for us?
Yeah, so Joker is Joker, but out of the DC world, what villain could get anywhere close to Joker level if they wanted to do this with another villain?
Ratcatcher. No, I'm kidding.
Kite Man. No, I'm kidding too.
Crazy Quill. Batmite.
I made a poll on Twitter, and Mr. Freeze did win the poll of what people thought that they would like to see through this lens. But I think my two go-to answers for that would be a Two-Face or a Riddler. Would probably be the ones.
Mine's the Penguin. Especially considering some
Tim
of the
Burton
other
version.
No.
Bring back the duck, of course.
I've mentioned these stories a couple of times on other episodes of the BOF podcast, but the
Pain and Prejudice.
Yeah, the Greg Hurwitz Pain and Prejudice series is a great character exploration of what makes Oswald Cobblepot tick. But the Joker's Asylum Penguin one-shot that was written by Jason Aaron, who's now well known in Marvel circles, for
Who's
putting
that guy?
his mark, putting his mark on the Avengers and on Thor for a very long time. The Joker's Asylum one shot.
Did he make SJW Thor though?
Oh God!
Sorry.
Oh,
Did
that's
you
I am totally kidding, by the way.
Did you have to do that?
I know. Jason Aaron's Thor run is very good, but anyway, continue.
And his perspective on the Penguin is also good. And I think that there's similar potential for that kind of exploration of ostracism from society that leads to a very, very dour flavor of greatness. Because Penguin has his mind, and it leads him to incredible heights while being forged by a very unique kind of pain and prejudice. So the Penguin, I think, would be really, really great to explore like this.
As far as Batman villains go, I mean, I'll be honest, it's hard. It just, again, I'm open to anything, to be quite honest. Gun to my head, I guess I would say, yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know what I would do. I just say like the Riddler, Penguin. I just throw someone out there that's really easy because I just don't know. I would love, to be honest, I would love like just a villain centric team, not like a Birds of Prey that's coming out in a little bit, but like like maybe you have Batman out of the picture, but you have the villains kind of operating. It's all from their perspective, but they're already the villains. It's not the origin film, but you're like, take Batman
like
66.
The Suicide Squad?
No, like Batman 66, and they're not captured. They're all operating as criminals in this world. But you see it from the inside. It's all from their perspective, and it's all them trying to get through, get somewhere. But Batman is the enemy, but he's not played as the protagonist. He's like the antagonist in a sense, to where they're trying to do something evil and he's got to stop them, but it's all from their perspective. It's not from his perspective. So you only see Batman show up to stop them, not as, but again, you go into their psyches and go into what makes them tick, and that kind of stuff would be interesting.
Like a cocaine-fueled, murder-infested, dark reflection of the 66 movie.
Exactly. No, seriously. But again, get into the psyches of the characters, because I think there is something there that you could play off of, and what would drive these people. Again, and that's always drives me to I love superheroes as an adult, is the fact that what exactly makes these people, because the people, they become these villains and they become these symbols, and they know that what they do is ridiculous, because they all, in all these movies we watch, they acknowledge that I become a superhero. Iron Man talks about it. Well, I can't be a superhero. They acknowledge that superheroes exist. So that idea of being a superhero is cheesy and silly to an extent, or a supervillain, if you will. So what drives them to do that? And obviously, as comics and these heroes evolve, writers find clever ways to find reasons why they do these things. And I would love to see that from a very human perspective. And what would the villain perspective and a realistic perspective be on a hero that's trying to stop them, again, from their perspective, and what makes them villains, and not sympathy. And again, like we were talking about earlier, but what drives them? What exactly makes them? Are they just insane? Like the Joker's just insane, or what is it? So again,
dude,
what complexities?
We need to do Gotham Central on the Comic Binge. If you like
I
stories,
need a good excuse to read some of that stuff.
If you like stories where Batman only shows up when he acts, while there's other character work.
Well, there you go. That's
around
my
him.
answer. Gotham Central. Then, if that's what it is, Gotham Central. There you go. Make Gotham Central movie.
Dude, I would be all over that.
Yeah,
That's easy.
That's what the Gotham TV show should have been.
Oh, definitely.
But it wasn't, right?
No.
You got Jerome, and you got like this weird Harley character, Barbara character. That's like
3 different poison ivies, and yeah.
And also really, really decent exploitation of Freeze in that first story. Yeah, we need to do Gotham Central.
All right.
Oh, yeah. I know what happens,
Yeah.
what Freeze does in that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing, the way that those comics use the characters completely flip how, the stakes are completely different when it's not like, I'm going to freeze all of Gotham, that's a little different feeling when instead of that, like he goes into the, not to spoil things, but he just goes into the police station and he like freezes some guy and he like his arm falls off or a guy dies or whatever. And you just see like the personal stakes and it's a completely different tone.
Well, and Paul, you like Michael Lark, don't you?
Oh yeah, I love Michael Larkin and Brubaker together.
Yeah, we gotta read Gotham Central.
No, we will. And I know you've been talking about it for a long time, but we should wrap this show up. We've been going a long time.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, this will probably end up being a 2-part show.
I was just gonna say that's probably a smart. You can have a sequel part, just that alone.
Yeah, this whole
the only Joker sequel we're gonna see, the podcast.
The podcast. Yeah, this second part was
Lauer. Don't say that.
Well, lots of sequel discussion, but since you guys are talking about Comic Binge, why don't you guys like plug your stuff and then plug the Comic Binge?
Hey, I'll do it for him. If you loved hearing two people argue,
well, actually,
check out the Comic Binge.
First few episodes haven't had a ton of arguments yet.
No. We don't really argue that much, really. I mean, we do and we don't, I guess. But the thing is, if you're just hearing us for the first time, Chris and I are very good friends, very, very good friends, and we love each other very much. And we're on a show called the Comic Binge Podcast. Mr. Ryan Haas was just on the show. We actually
listened.
Episode 3.
Oh, thank you, Lauer. You might be one of 5, but those 5 people are amazing. So
it was a good
I love
one.
you guys.
It was Batman.
Thank you.
I had to.
Well, and the thing is, we give our Joker recommendations that you can read on the DC Universe app. So if you have DC Universe and you want comics to read, we give you recommendations that are on the app, and that's the whole point of the show. The show is basically aimed for you to use your Marvel Unlimited or your DC Universe apps and use it to their full potential of the comic book reading, because the comic medium is amazing, and it's still, even though it's more prevalent now than it was maybe like 20 years ago, it's not prevalent enough in my opinion. It needs to be more and more in the limelight because it's an amazing medium. And so Chris, one of my good friends here, we both love comics, and we started the show, and it's just about basically promoting the comic medium through these subscription services. And the last episode was was probably the best one of the 3, just because Ryan was there and we had a blast, and we really got deep into comic books and the character of Joker and the comics and all that stuff. And it was great. So check it out. If you want to learn more about comic books, and if you don't know much and you're kind of like, yeah, it's intimidating. Where do I go online? I can read all this stuff, but it's overwhelming to read all that stuff. Well, why don't you have fun? Download one of our shows, subscribe, and listen, and have people, talk and debate and discuss what they love about the comic books. And when you hear me and Chris argue, like, you got to understand, like, that's just how we are. And I love this guy. So if you thought things were tense and we hate each other, that's not even remotely the case. So
not true.
We have our own show together. So it's legit. So, but honestly, check out the Comic Binge. We're at Comic Binge on Twitter. Follow us.
Or Binge Comic.
Binge Comic.
Yeah, Binge Comic. See, I already screwed it up. See, you guys know better than me. At Binge Comic. And so check us out there. We're on Apple. Subscribe, please. And again, we love comics. You want to learn about comics, check it out.
Sweet. Chris, you got anything to add to that?
Please listen to the Comic Binge. You can find me on Twitter at Chris Clow, ChrisClow. I'm working on the next episode of my comic book video game podcast, Comics on Consoles, dedicated to 1994's The Death and Return of Superman for the Super NES and the Sega Genesis. And hopefully I'll be around again. We talk more Batman.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope hopefully all your new N64 equipment will come to good use on a future episode of Comics on Consoles.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a reason why I bought it. I'll put it that way.
To play wrestling games in high def.
WrestleMania 2000.
It's a great
Revenge. That's my favorite.
All of the above. All of the above.
What do you got, Lauer?
I've got a Twitter account. It's at Lauer_Ryan. Lauer spelled like lower.
Lauer spelled lower.
But more importantly, go to BatmanOnFilm.com, because I, just the other day, met artist extraordinaire Lee Bermejo and even got to do an interview with him, and I wrote the interview.
That was a good interview.
Batman on Film. Thank you. It was fantastic. And the fun story was, I had to go on my dinner break, or my lunch break during the day, and it was at a comic shop not too far from my work. But I had to scramble and hurry and rush and get there in downtown Chicago madness, and it was a comfortable day. But when I'm just imagining fast, I'm running, because I don't know if there's going to be a massive line. I can't take too long from work, but yet they also kind of don't care. But I need to get there, but then I don't know how long I'm going to have Lee, and if I'm going to have him to myself or while he's signing and whatnot. So I show up and I have him all to myself, and I'm sweaty and I'm hot, and I'm
just imagining the part from Dumb and Dumber. I'm just imagining the scene from Dumb and Dumber when Jim Carrey rushes back to the airport at the beginning of the movie, and he's just like, what is it? Yeah, they're telling him not to go through the,
it's okay.
Go to the plane. I'm a limo driver. Yeah,
I'm a BOF contributor.
Exactly, and that's you.
Yeah. But no, he was awesome. He's exactly as cool as you'd hope that he would have been, and that's refreshing too. That you meet somebody and they end up being what you expect. He was just cool. He answered everything that I asked, even though he had to go catch an international flight back to Italy. But yeah, he was like, "No, I've got some minutes." And I'm like, "Are you sure? Because if you miss your plane, damn." And he's like, "No, go ahead." And so then I just got to ask him everything, because of course I could have sat and talked to him for an hour, but I was like, okay, I just got to ask him the questions that I have down, maybe a couple extra. And yeah, he was really cool. And he signed everything that I took. So yeah.
Well, that's good.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's on Batman on Film. Including Batman Damned #1. Boom! He signed that beast.
The uncensored beast.
That's right. Yeah,
as we like to call it.
Yeah,
yeah.
That should have been my opener. I just really want to thank you for drawing Bruce Wayne's anatomy. It took a lot of courage.
You might call that issue a swinging issue.
Or it's a nubbed issue.
Oh.
Well, the hardcover isn't, not as.
Man.
It's been censored, but yeah.
We'll say that.
I thought that was a euphemism.
It turtled in the hardcover issue. So.
Oh my gosh! We are getting. Oh my goodness.
Oh well, I need to plug some stuff before it gets real bad on this show. But
too late.
No. Okay. Well, of course, follow me on Twitter at SMB_Ryan. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Definitely, if you have, this is probably episode 157 at this point, but if you haven't listened to episode 155, where me and Pete talk about all of our New York Comic Con adventures, go and do that. And speaking of New York Comic Con, by now there should be tons of content that we produced up on, at least on BOF's YouTube channel. We have a lot of in-person interviews we got to do with all the people involved in the Wonder Woman Bloodlines movie, as well as Batman Beyond, the Batman Beyond 20th anniversary event and Blu-ray that's coming out in October. So as we are recording this, a lot of the Wonder Woman stuff is already up, but by the time this shows up, the Batman Beyond stuff should probably also be on the YouTube channel. And if you haven't seen it on the YouTube channel, I'm also planning on just taking the audio from all that stuff and just slapping it on a podcast. So one way or another, you're going to listen to that stuff, damn it, because we put a lot of effort into it. So on that note, I guess that will be it for today's episode. For Paul, Chris, and Ryan, I'm Ryan. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Hey now! You've been listening to the Batman on Film podcast, a proud member and the sponsor of the Batman Podcast Network, BatmanPodcastNetwork.com. You can listen to the BOF Podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, TuneIn, and wherever good podcasts like this one can be found. Want to advertise on the BOF Podcast? Go to advertisecast.com/the Batman on Film Con podcast. Follow Jet on Twitter at Batman on Film and on BOF's Facebook fan page at facebook.com/jet.batmanonfilm. Email Jet via jet@batman-on-film.com. I'm announcer Rachel. Thanks for listening.